Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at some ideas that might just change how you think about romantic attraction.
Mm.
We've been digging into David DeAngelo's work, and he talks about these, lover and provider personality types.
Right. And what's interesting right off the bat is this idea that these aren't really conscious choices women are making,
Uh-huh.
but more like unconscious mental programs, I think is how DeAngelo puts it.
Yeah.
So it's not just about looks,
Right.
right? It's about how a man's personality, his communication style, even his achievements,
Mhm.
how they trigger different responses.
Responses related to like short-term attraction versus maybe long-term potential.
Exactly that. Short-term versus long-term.
And it's a pretty detailed breakdown he gives. He identifies 8 successful subtypes.
Mm-hmm.
Divided into those lover types, they tend to create that initial spark,
Right. The immediate thing.
And then the provider types, which signal more stable long-term possibilities.
And he also mentions some unsuccessful types too, which
Which we might recognize.
might.
Yeah.
So for this deep dive, based on what you asked for, we're going to unpack these categories
Okay.
and the specific personality types within them. The goal is really to understand the potential insights they offer,
Insights into why we're drawn to certain people.
Yeah, and maybe even help listeners understand some of their own patterns and preferences.
Okay, let's do it. Let's get right into it with the lover personalities first.
All right.
These are the types that, according to DeAngelo anyway, tend to generate that immediate sort of visceral attraction.
Hmm.
First up is the bad boy.
The bad boy.
Mhm.
Okay. The core here, according to DeAngelo, is a perceived sense of danger.
Danger. How so?
Well, think about the classic image. Tough look, tough clothes, maybe acts tough.
Right.
He even throws out examples like Tommy Lee, a young Mickey Rourke, bikers, even Sammy the Bull, apparently.
Wow. Okay, so it's really that edge.
It's all about this air of risk and unpredictability.
Right. And the pull, as DeAngelo sees it, is this kind of intense, almost addictive emotional rush
Yeah.
that comes from being around someone who seems a little bit, well, dangerous.
A little dangerous. And he observes that these types often end up being the ones sort of in control in a relationship. It's magnetic, he says.
It makes you wonder about the underlying psychology, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Like, is it the hint of the forbidden, the challenge to norms, that kind of thing?
The opposite of safe and predictable.
Right. But DeAngelo does make a really clear point here.
Mm.
It's the perception of danger that's attractive.
Not actually being a criminal.
Exactly. Not actually breaking the law. That's a crucial, crucial distinction he makes.
Okay, definitely crucial. All right, next in the lover category then, the adventurer.
The adventurer.
Less leather jackets, maybe more, well, adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Surfing, skiing, racing cars, maybe bungee jumping, skydiving, that kind of thing.
Indiana Jones, James Bond.
Those are the examples he gives, yeah. It's about the constant pursuit of fun and new experiences.
So a different kind of thrill compared to the bad boy.
Totally. Less about that sort of dark edge, more about zest for life, fearlessness. DeAngelo notes they tend to maybe stretch the truth a bit in stories.
Huh, okay. Always looking for the next adrenaline rush.
Pretty much. And that optimism, that excitement seems to be a big part of the appeal.
But there's often a but, isn't there?
Well, DeAngelo does mention a potential downside.
Yeah.
He suggests that adventurers he's encountered tend to be less faithful in relationships.
Ah, like commitment feels too tame.
Maybe.
Oh.
He even uses Hugh Hefner as an example of this kind of untamed aspect, the potential for multiple partners.
Interesting. So both the bad boy and the adventurer offer an escape from the ordinary in a way.
Yeah, but one's a walk on the wild side, the other's more outwardly positive, perhaps, but maybe just as unreliable.
Okay. Moving along the lover spectrum, we get to the seducer.
The seducer.
This one sounds like it's all about having a really deep, almost innate understanding of women.
Yeah, DeAngelo even jokes they might have some, like, past life experiences the opposite sex.
Huh. So what's the core here?
Well, what's fascinating is the focus on sensuality, making a woman feel incredibly desirable.
Mm.
They're portrayed as being very attentive to her needs, almost prioritizing her pleasure above their own, at least in the moment.
Like Johnny Depp's character in Don Juan DeMarco, that kind of vibe.
That's the example he uses, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It captures that image of someone deeply romantic, intensely focused.
It sounds like they have this natural gift with women, according to DeAngelo.
That's the idea.
Mm.
But there's a recurring theme with these lover types, isn't there?
Yeah. The seducer isn't necessarily looking for something long-term, is that it?
That's what the source suggests.
Mhm.
Once the initial goal, often, sexual intimacy is achieved, their interest tends to fade.
So they might come back, but commitment isn't the main driver.
Doesn't seem to be their primary motivation, no.
Okay. And finally, in this lover category, we have the artist.
Ah, the artist.
The musician, the poet, the emotionally expressive type. He mentions Barry White, Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, what's interesting with the artist is the draw seems to be maybe a woman's desire to connect with someone complex, a bit mysterious.
Hmm.
DeAngelo suggests artists often experience the world differently, maybe heightened senses or something.
Right.
And he proposes women might be more attuned to understanding or appreciating these expressions than, say, other men.
So it's like women enjoy the challenge of trying to understand them.
Maybe. Or maybe fulfilling a need to feel understood themselves by connecting with someone who sees the world differently, that kind of thing.
Okay. But there's a potential downside mentioned here, too.
Yeah, DeAngelo does point out a possible lack of self-control, maybe tendencies towards unhealthy habits. They might also struggle with practical things like organization, keeping track of time.
A stereotypical artist, maybe.
A bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at these lover personalities as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
what's the pattern?
Well, each one seems to offer something outside the routine, right?
Exactly. Whether it's the thrill of danger, the excitement of adventure, the intensity of connection, or that depth of emotion.
They tend to spark that immediate attraction.
That immediate attraction
Mm.
without necessarily promising a stable future.
Okay, so that's the lover side of the equation. Now let's switch gears and delve into the provider personalities.
Providers.
Here, the initial dynamic is often different, he says. Instead of immediate attraction, these types tend to get a more cautious response.
Yeah, like women are looking for evidence, proof of long-term loyalty, stability, that sort of thing.
Okay, first up, the successful guy.
The successful guy. This is all about providing a comfortable lifestyle, a sense of security,
Like the nice car, the impressive house.
upscale dinners, thoughtful gifts.
Yeah.
Think of the stereotypical successful professional.
Hmm.
Doctor, lawyer, stockbroker.
Got it. And DeAngelo notes they often have dominant traits.
Often, yeah. Having achieved a certain level of control and success in their careers, that tends to carry over.
And the appeal here seems plus straightforward then.
It seems to be. Stability and security. DeAngelo even calls this the security blanket.
The security blanket.
Yeah, he suggests many women might prefer a consistent, reliable income over the, ups and downs of a riskier career, even if it could earn more sometimes.
Makes sense. Now, what's this about a more cynical observation?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting, maybe somewhat cynical observation from DeAngelo. He speculates that successful guys might be more prone to using prostitutes.
Really?
He presents it more as a hypothesis, based on his experiences, it seems. Not a proven fact, but something he observed.
Okay, good to clarify.
And he also cautions against men trying to fake this success.
Oh, why is that?
He suggests it often triggers that wait-and-see response from women anyway, and it's just, financially unsustainable to keep up the act.
Right.
He even references The Rules, that book for women, as a kind of strategy against this type to test their genuine success and commitment.
Wow. So trying too hard to project provider status early on can actually backfire.
Seems like it could, yeah.
Okay. Next, in this category, the daddy. Now, this one sounds like it gets into some interesting power dynamics.
It does. The daddy personality, as DeAngelo describes it, is characterized by control.
Control, like telling a woman what to do.
Pretty much. Taking charge in a very direct way. And he suggests this can be surprisingly appealing to some women.
Even powerful women.
Yeah, even those who are powerful in other areas of their lives. Maybe they appreciate relinquishing control in a romantic context sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
He even draws a connection to dynamics in S&M and mentions Philip Miller's book, Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns, for more on dominance and submission.
So the attraction isn't about material things here, but more about the sexual energy from being controlled.
That seems to be the idea. But, and this is important, DeAngelo includes a very serious warning.
Against what?
Against that control ever crossing the line into obsessive behavior or stalking.
Absolutely. Critical difference.
Absolutely. Highlights the difference between a consensual dynamic and potentially harmful actions. It's all about mutual agreement, boundaries.
Okay. Moving to a personality type that seems a bit more conventional, maybe. The regular guy.
Ah, the regular guy, yeah. Down to earth, loyal, stable, hardworking.
DeAngelo paints a pretty classic picture, doesn't he?
He does. Married, maybe 2.3 kids, living in a standard suburban house. You know the image.
Yeah.
What's notable about the regular guy is that while he might have had some adventure earlier in life, he often settles into a more predictable routine.
Mm-hmm.
And DeAngelo observes they often end up in long-term relationships with women who have similar values.
And the dynamic within the relationship.
He suggests the woman might gradually take on more of a controlling role. Not necessarily in a bad way, maybe just gentle persuasion, directing activities, that sort of thing.
So comfortable, maybe, if not always super thrilling.
That's the sense. And DeAngelo actually suggests that regular guys could benefit from incorporating some elements.
From the lover types.
Yeah, like the adventurer and seducer, to keep things more interesting.
Hmm.
He even points to his own book, Double Your Dating, the cocky and funny chapters specifically, as a resource.
Interesting. So stability is good, but you still need some spark.
It implies that, yeah, injecting some fun, some playful sensuality can be vital for keeping attraction going over time.
Okay. And finally, in the provider category, we have the ass-kissing guy.
Or, as DeAngelo rather bluntly puts it, the ass-kissing girly man.
Right. So this is the guy who always agrees, constantly apologizes.
Uses submissive body language, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically tries to give the woman whatever she wants. Passive-aggressive tendencies sometimes, too. Acts kind of like a girl, is his phrase.
And is this actually appealing?
Well, DeAngelo suggests that maybe highly dominant or controlling women might initially find this type appealing.
Why? Because it provides someone they can easily direct.
That seems to be the idea.
Yeah.
But he strongly advises against this as a long-term strategy for the man.
Says it leads to an unhappy life.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
Unhappy existence. He also recommends incorporating traits of the adventurer and maybe the daddy to shift away from this pattern.
Got it. So the provider personalities, while they all hint at long-term potential, they really cover a range, don't they?
Absolutely. From the outwardly successful to the more submissive. It shows that providing isn't just about money.
It can manifest in different ways.
Exactly. And if we go back to that initial idea, these provider types seem to activate a different set of, unconscious desires in women.
The ones that prioritize security, commitment.
A sense of long-term partnership, yeah, over that immediate excitement from the lover types.
Okay. Now, before we wrap up, DeAngelo also quickly touches on some unsuccessful personality types.
Right. The ones that, according to his observations anyway, tend to be less attractive to most women, at least initially.
And it's important to stress these are generalizations, right, based on his experience.
Absolutely. Attraction is ultimately very personal.
Mm-hmm.
But the list he provides includes types like, well, the hippie.
Characterized by lack of attention to grooming, he says.
Right. Then the nerd, often seen as socially awkward. The redneck, relying on stereotypes there. Someone who is prejudiced, ignorant, or overly proud. The insecure or needy man.
Okay.
The afraid man, lacking drive. The mommy's boy. The argument man always needs to be right. And interestingly, someone who is unattractive on purpose. Unless, he notes, that specifically aligns with a partner's preference.
It's quite a list.
Yeah.
And while some might seem a bit obvious,
it reinforces the idea that certain behaviors, certain presentations can be pretty significant turnoffs, especially early on.
yeah, it certainly suggests that while personality is huge, some traits can just act as strong deterrents.
Definitely.
So as you're listening to all this, what are your thoughts? Which of these lover or provider types stand out to you?
Yeah, maybe you see aspects of yourself in some of these. Or perhaps you recognize patterns in people you've, encountered.
This framework, it really highlights how important self-awareness can be, doesn't it?
For sure. Understanding your own tendencies in relationships and how those might be perceived by others.
It encourages you to think about the kind of initial responses you typically get. Is it that immediate spark or more of that reserved wait-and-see attitude?
Exactly. And thinking about your own relationship goals, too. Are you mainly interested in shorter-term connections or something more enduring?
Right. And DeAngelo makes that interesting point about potentially starting off displaying more lover qualities.
To create that initial attraction.
Yeah, which then might allow for a later transition into more provider characteristics.
It introduces this idea of a potential strategy, doesn't it? Even if it's happening subconsciously for many people.
Yeah, it does. Which brings up maybe a final thought for listeners to consider. How do societal expectations, or what we see in the media, how do they reinforce or maybe challenge these lover and provider archetypes?
That's a great question. And how might a deeper understanding of these potential unconscious programs, as DeAngelo calls them, empower you?
Empower you to approach your relationships with more intention, perhaps.
Exactly. More consciously.
Definitely something to think about. We encourage you to really consider these concepts. See which aspects resonate most with your own experiences, your own observations.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.